Okay, I will take attendance. Chief Dotson?
Here.
Detective Clark?
Here.
Mr. Roth?
Here.
Detective Smith? Here. Officer Heldorfer will be marked as not present. So we do have a quorum, and I will turn it over to the chair of the committee, Chief Dotson.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here and joining us this evening. We have a relatively short agenda, so I wanted to take a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting before we get into the agenda items to thank you for being here, to talk about how this journey started back in August when this committee was put together to look at the transition from the Metropolitan Police Department from state control to local control. Many of you have been with us through most of our meetings, if not all. John Chasnoff, I saw you here earlier, John. You've been at most, if not all, of our meetings. And one of the things that this committee was really tasked with that came out of the state statute was to make recommendations about the assimilation, the transition of the Metropolitan Police Department into local control. We could sit here as a panel and make our own recommendations, but we decided very early on that it was important for us to hear from the community. And so we've hosted a series of opportunities for the community to make comment. This is by far the most well-attended, and I appreciate everybody for being here. We held one at police headquarters. We held one at the Schlafly Library, and this is our third out in the community. So I wanted to thank you for taking your time. I know it's the holiday season, everyone has busy and priorities, but the Metropolitan Police Department and the way that we police the city of St. Louis, to me, Sam Dotson, is very important. And I always want to hear feedback from the community about things that are working, things that aren't working, and things that we can do better. So as we move through our agenda tonight, you'll have a chance to make comment about what you see local control for the Metropolitan Police Department to look like. And that's just that, an opportunity to make comment. Then the committee will take that comment and put together some thoughts and recommendations for the police department and for local government. So again, thank you for being here, and I don't know if before we go to the agenda, if anybody else on the committee has something that they would like to say.
And thank you, Chief Dotson, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eddie Roth. I'm the Director of Operations for the City of St. Louis. I work in the Mayor's office, and I sit on this committee because I'm a former member of the Board of Police Commissioners. The Board of Police Commissioners being the governing body of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department from the middle of the 19th century until about 120 days ago. And I just want to make just a few general observations about this committee and what I see the purpose of these conversations with you in the community. The Transition Committee for Municipal Police, of which we are all members, is a product of the legislation, the voter-initiated legislation that caused the police department to go from being a state agency overseen by the Board of Police Commissioners to local control, which became effective on September 1st, which is to say the move from the police department being a state agency to a division of city government, a division of the Department of Public Safety, with the Director of Public Safety, Chief Dotson's boss, and then Mayor Slay, the Director of Public Safety's boss. This committee, under the terms of the legislation, was made to consist of the Chief of Police, designees of statewide law enforcement organizations, and a former member of the Board of Police Commissioners. And so you can see it's a law enforcement-oriented committee. Its task is very technical in outlook. The idea being that as the police department changed governance and went from becoming a state agency to a city agency, that people in leadership and law enforcement could assist the city administration on technical law enforcement issues. Of course, much more is at stake in anything concerning our police department than technical law enforcement agencies. There are broad social interests, and I recognize faces here who have been observers and critics and commentators and thoughtful people who have given a lot of consideration to our police department and have been outspoken about it. Our power is very narrow. Our authority is just as a recommender and mainly about technical issues. As it turns out, a lot of the work that went into the transition was done before the effective date and rather than after it. And so much of what was envisioned for this committee had already been accomplished by a lot of work front-loaded on the front end. And so, as a group, we decided that the highest and best use for us wouldn't be as recommenders of broad social matters relating to the police department, because that was not our original charge, but rather was to go out into the community and create a record that would assist the administration in considering the issues that are foremost on your mind, whether that's about service, whether that's about professional training, whether that's about relations in the community, or whatever is of interest to you. We're making a record of it through the City Communications Division, so that we will have a permanent record, and one that we hope to summarize in a faithful way and in a useful way that fairly presents your point of view and what your recommendations are, and then allow the political process, because realize, the main purpose of local control of police was to bring accountability to our police department through our elected officials, not have our police department governed by a board, a 5-member board, 4 of whose members are selected by the governor and with the advice and consent of the state senate, but our own representatives and our own people, the people who pay the bills for this police department, the people who depend on its service, to come forward and be involved in shaping the kind of police department they want.
All right, before we move to the first item on the agenda, just a reminder, there is a sign-up sheet up here if someone would like to add their names to make comments. The first agenda item that we have is approval of the November 6, 2013 minutes. So if you've had a chance to review the minutes, I take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll put the motion out to approve the minutes.
And is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from November 6, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. The second item on the agenda is comment from the public. And at previous, we've asked that you limit your comments to 3 or 4 minutes. There seems to be quite a few, 10 or so people that have signed up. So if you would limit your comments to 3 to 4 minutes, that way we have an opportunity to move through the list. The first name on the list is Zach Chasnoff. So.
Hi. So, I just want to start by saying, find it slightly some of the opening remarks here were just a little bit troubling to me, and I find it slightly disingenuous to hold quote-unquote community meeting, but then to say at the beginning of the community meeting that most of the decisions have been made beforehand and front-loaded. So, I just kind of want to go on record as saying that that's kind of troubling to me, and I don't understand why the city is constantly doing things like that. A lot of this feels like kabuki theater a lot of the times, and I think we long for community meetings where decisions aren't made ahead of those input.
But I do want to be clear
Well,
about that.
you'll have time to address it in a second when I ask the question. So my other question speaks to the other part of what you said, Mr. Roth, which was that you guys have decided to focus mainly on narrow technical issues. And I wonder, there's nothing in the mandate that says that you have to do that, and I wonder why you guys have decided to limit yourselves to narrow technical issues when you could be focusing on broader issues, specifically like civilian oversight.
Well, when I say the things where the decisions that were made early on, I'm talking about purely operational things like classification of employees moving from a state agency to the civil service process in the city of St. Louis. Issues are relating to consolidating employees who, for example, work on the fleet management and equipment services. And instead of having 2 equipment services department, one for the police department and one for the rolling stock of the city of St. Louis, the 2 had to be integrated. There were a lot of technical issues around that gave rise to traditional labor concerns of fairness to employees and protection and work rules and those type of things. Those were the kind of decisions that were made up front. And the same thing with police officers in terms of a description of their basic duties and their working conditions. These were all things that were worked through earlier in the process, but which this committee, consisting of career law enforcement people and then me as a guy who was on the board of police commissioners, could help facilitate if the need arose. I know that you have broad concerns about social matters and community matters relating to the police department. So I would ask you, do you think that this is the best composition of a group to address those? This is a technical group of law enforcement professionals who are career people working through those technical issues.
Well,
The
if
whole-
you're- yeah.
Hold on. The whole purpose, as I see it, of moving from state control to local control is to open a broader dialogue on the shape of the police department that this community wants through traditional political processes, not through small blue ribbon commissions that hear from people at meetings like this, but through true direct involvement with your elected representatives and activism in the community to elect the kind of representatives who you think are best equipped to oversee and make the policy decisions that go into having a police department that well serves the community. So my point of view, I think it's obvious on its face that this is not the kind of group that would be best suited to tackle the kind of broad social and community issues that you are interested in police community relations, but rather the entire movement toward local control provides a different kind of voice and broader political involvement in these matters, not by yet another blue ribbon committee or a select group, but through traditional democratic processes. And that's what local control enables, and that what this group can do at the kind of very beginning of this transition, because we're all here and there's some attention paid to us, is come to the community, and we have standing room only here today. I think it's fantastic, and we'll stay here as long as people want to come up and make their points, and then we will fairly report them to the mayor and to the police leadership and to the Public Safety Committee of the Board of Aldermen, who have oversight and responsibilities relating to the police department. And I think that is a reasonable way to advance this conversation under the circumstances. That would be my point of view on your points.
Thank you. Followed up by John Jasmine.
I just wanted to say, my point of view from the beginning has been to urge you to take a broader point of view about what your mandate is and what the possibilities are. I think that Mr. Roth is correct in saying that this wouldn't be the panel to make some of those broad decisions for the city. But I do think that you have an opportunity to start to lay out some of the questions and to point the city in a direction where we can begin the conversation as we go through this transition. So I hope that you don't miss the opportunity in your final report to raise some of those broader questions, to report back to the city that there was interest in some of these broader concerns, and to start to lay out what they are, what maybe the broad parameters of solutions might be, that type of approach. I think you'd miss an opportunity not to do that. And since you have front-loaded some of those technical questions, it provides the opportunity for all of us to gather here today and start to talk about some of those bigger issues. I think it's really evident that the community is crying out for input into the police department and wants to see a department that's responsive to the citizens. And so I think you all with open ears can begin to hear that and frame the conversation as we move forward. So with all that said, I'm going to ask a relatively technical question to see if you've considered it and what you've thought about it. There was a statute that was passed in the state legislature last year, which, to my understanding, said that a police chief could not be fired without the, I think it's 2/3 majority vote of the city council. So that was a statewide statute that was passed. I don't know how it applies to St. Louis, given our kind of unique status in the state, or maybe unique along with Kansas City. So I'm not sure how that applies and how it would, if it does apply, how it would affect the relationship between the mayor's office and the chief of police in terms of balance of power, how secure the chief feels in his position, and how independently he can act from political influence.
Yes to all of it. I'm aware of it. I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to comment on that. And it was a statewide initiative, so I had zero input into that conversation as the chief. I had zero input into that conversation, and I'm only vaguely familiar with the law. I haven't had an in-depth conversation. To answer your question correctly, I see the police department responsive to the people of the city of St. Louis. And so as long as we're providing the service, the city of St. Louis votes to elect their mayor, they vote to elect their alder people, they vote to elect, and so if they're dissatisfied with their police service, they should let it known to their elected officials. And I'm not an attorney, so I haven't looked at it in depth. So I appreciate it, John.
So
Thank you.
And so, just to be clear, so the that's not an issue that the committee is looking into or exploring with the advice of council?
In that, it's a state law, and so I don't know, I don't see it as something that this group was charged with about the transition to local control, because I don't see how that, St. Louis is not different than Springfield or Kansas City or Joplin or Hannibal in that respect.
I can tell you that the intent of the local control initiative itself was to give a little less security to the chief of police that existed under the state governance, and more or less made the chief of police an at-will employee of the city, to maybe to instill some extra accountability, as opposed to under state law. The chief of police pretty much could only be removed for cause, and that is not the case under. So I don't know what the effect of the new statute is. The whole idea, as I say, of local control is to bring more direct accountability to, by the way, what I think is an excellent police department that has evolved and grown and became very much accountable even under the old system. But I think that by making a division of city government, and with the Board of Aldermen more directly involved, they had some budgetary authority before, but now have more direct oversight and review authority. And one of our excellent members of the Board of Aldermen has just come in, and he is a sharp questioner at Public Safety Committee meetings. It's not always comfortable appearing before him. That you would have an opportunity to become involved in ways that didn't exist under the old structure.
David, help me with it.
Merrick Flores.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. Kind of echoing the some of the questions that we've already talked about. Of like, it seems like your guys' charge or your perspective is that dealing with only limited technical issues, but I'd like to charge you guys outside of the board as well to start thinking of those broader social issues and the community issues, because I think each of you individually have the power to take those issues that the community has and put them into effect to see a kind of a police department in a city that we all deserve. With that, looking at a more broader issue, I personally, as well as others in my community in St. Louis, have a strong opposition to surveillance drones in a locally controlled police department. And I would like to ask, why would there even be a consideration of investing funds within a surveillance program, drones, where there is no privacy protections and there is not even yet federal regulations within a domestic surveillance drone program, dealing with the length of times that drones can be flown or that the records can be kept and who is reviewing those. There's many questions out there that the federal government hasn't even established. So why is it a concern for the local police department to take into effect if we haven't even, the federal government hasn't even addressed these yet? Because I just don't think it's best for the city or for our community at this time.
And I appreciate it. And I will give you, as the chief, certainly interested in the program. We've invested no dollars into the program at all, except a little bit of time for research. And as we go forward, we will certainly have public conversation and public dialogue about it. So there are no drones flying now. There are no plans to have drones flying anytime soon. But again, as technologies advance, as resources become tighter, it certainly is something that's worth the discussion. And so we will have a discussion going forward publicly. So now we move to Evan Smith.
Hi. My question question was about civilian review, and if the committee takes a stance on civilian review. In other words, when police are, let me say it this way, when citizens file grievances against individual police officers for misconducts or possible crimes, do you support an empowered body of citizens that can review, replete with subpoena powers, the police conduct? If you don't have a stance on that, I'd like to know why not.
And I think this conversation is to get public feedback, and then this body will put together a report and recommendation. I think it's more incumbent upon you, the public, to express why it's important and why you see it as an issue, and not ask this committee that really has no, absent me perhaps, have no direct conversation about civilian review. So instead of questioning us, what's the value to civilian review is the opportunity that you have now to lay out.
Would you like me to respond?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, so I think we've seen across the country and for a while now, I guess a thin blue line, a shield, where a fraternity of police. We understand that police are working people, and that it's important to recognize that police are not an enemy, but police as working people. I'm a teacher, and teachers make mistakes all the time. And, I think it's important that the public has confidence that police are being reviewed, police conduct is being reviewed by independent, non-partial bodies. I'm not sure that that happens all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Johnson, Lancaster?
Good evening. I just have a question. Has this body given any thought to, or is considering making any recommendations to how to continue citizen input into the police department, since there will not be a board of police commissioners?
Actually, to answer that question briefly, we've had conversations with the Public Safety Committee and the Board of Aldermen, and I've pledged to, one, respond anytime that they ask me to discuss any issues that are going on, and I've also pledged to attend meetings every other month with them to give them an update. If you remember, the police board met monthly. I've offered to respond anytime they had questions and to be there every other month to do a presentation similar that was done with the Board of Police Commissioners. So the next meeting is scheduled for January 16th. For the Public Safety Committee at City Hall. I just don't know the time, but if you check the postings of the Board of Aldermen for the Public Safety Committee, they can advise you the time of the meeting, but it is scheduled, the next meeting is January 16th. Jasmine Maurer? Did I get that right?
Yeah. First off, I just want to echo what some other people have said, where I think it's really important because you have laid out some of this groundwork to kind of create a path so we can talk about some of these issues that are coming up in these conversations and kind of figure out how we can address a lot of these concerns that people are having. I think that's something that is obviously important to the people of St. Louis. But with that, I'm going to ask a technical question. So I wanted to ask about the Marshal's Office and the airport police and kind of what your recommendations with those are, if you're going to integrate them back into the city police or keep them as their own standing bodies.
I'll answer the Marshal question first. The city charter contemplates that if there is a Metropolitan Police Department, that the Marshals will fall under the Metropolitan Police Department. That has already happened. It happened on September 1st. So I view the Marshals as a separate unit, a separate division inside the police department. They're not commissioned police officers. They still hold that space as Marshals did previously. The airport is an ongoing conversation, and there haven't been any final decisions made about the airport. Actually, there is a member of the committee who's not here tonight who is a captain at the Airport Police Department, and so it's certainly in conversation, but there haven't been any final decisions. The Marshals is done already. Jamala Rogers. Oh, there you are.
Good evening. I just want to make a comment about the concern that other folks have had about the committee and the narrowness of it, because Eddie Ross should know that his team is the one who is responsible for the language in the ballot, as well as for the specificity of who is going to be on there, so it's narrow by design. So I just think it's disingenuous to then be able to hide behind that to say, well, this group doesn't deal with that. When people think about a transition team, they think about what are the key components that need to be talked about and monitored as we make the move from state to local. My question is, during the process when we were trying to get local control, and there were hearings both at the state level, the St. Louis Police Department, and this was basically their finance person, said that there was going to be substantial savings when the local patrol came to St. Louis. It might have been like anywhere from $2 to $4 million. And he was very specific about where those dollars could come from. A few months ago, in the Public Safety Committee, you said no such savings does exist. And so I think in retrospect, it makes one think about if that was factual, that testimony was factual, and if not, what happened to those savings that were laid out, and were they true or not true?
And I can answer that question. You painted it in a way that wasn't quite complete. When I testified in the Board of Aldermen in the budget process last year, early spring, late winter last year, we talked about savings that could be realized. Those savings were baked into the budget this year. So the Metropolitan Police Department should have been funded at something greater than it was, but anticipating local control, because the ballot initiative had already passed, we had an original target date of July 1, but it actually became September 1. So when the budget was created, it anticipated those types of savings already. And as the budget went through the process to the Board of Aldermen, through E&A, and ultimately approved, those savings were already realized. So there's not a windfall of $2 or $4 million. The operating budget of the police department and other parts of the city benefited because of those potential savings.
Do you have amounts for those and where they were saving?
You'd have to talk to the budget director of the city for that.
I'll leave you my card, and if you want to send me an email, I will pull that together. It does exist, and there were positions that were left vacant in anticipation of the transition that were not filled, and that represents real savings. Although I would say this, the efficiency is an element of what made local control a good idea. And I think over time we will see an efficient and more effective police department because of the governance. But I want to address your question about this idea of the narrowness of this committee and your implication that it was structured that way, and now, I think the way you said it is we're hiding behind it. If I were an activist seeking reform in law enforcement, and I think that in my own way that I am, I would not want an appointed committee to be the voice of reform. I would want to change the system in a way that enabled all interested people to become involved in conventional and traditional political processes, rather than appearing before the Board of Police Commissioners, on which I sat, and being listened to politely by that appointed board, being listened to politely by another appointed board. I would rather be able to petition my alderman under circumstances where where that alderman had real authority to do some things. I would rather be involved in holding my mayor accountable, and this is a city that has a multitude of ideas about what a police department should look like and how it should be governed, and now it has the opportunity for everybody to become involved in that debate, rather than the decisions to be relegated to a small group of appointed people. So I think that actually it's the other way around. Appointing a technical committee to ensure a seamless transition in the core function of a police department, which is to protect and to serve the community, is the right kind of transition committee, and then move quickly to the political arena and allow this larger conversation to take place. And there will be people as part of that debate that will disagree with you on many things. There'll be people who will agree with you on many things. But in the end, I think that the public will have more confidence in what I think is an outstanding agency, because they will be closer to that agency in terms of their voice.
Well, your comment infers that only law enforcement has technical knowledge.
Well,
Because that's all that's on there, and that was by design, by the language of the ballot.
but only, I mean, really the function of this committee had to do more with labor and technical issues having to do with integrating a city civil service
Again.
workforce. Right.
Is only law enforcement can do that? Know
Well,
that?
well, I would tell you this, that this is an advisory committee, and in order to ensure and give confidence to people who, change is scary, I think that it was a comfort to people who have devoted their careers both on the city side and the law enforcement side to know that an advisory committee, we don't have any power to do anything other than to listen and to make recommendations, that they knew that a group of career people were sitting and watching and helping to make sure that everything went smoothly for the people who devote their careers. That's just one piece of this transition. The public has a role in this transition too. And part of that is being played out today, but it's played out every Friday at the Board of Aldermen, and it's played out every 2 years in terms of the election of the people who make our policy in this community. And all of you have been involved in that, whether as voters or people who put yard signs or hand out handbills or have served in public office, or who are in the press writing columns and offering their opinions to large groups of people.
Thank you. Steve Hollis? Are you there?
Yes. So I don't care what the role of your committee is, except I hope that you will publicize my remarks widely. And I think that my remarks do have something to do with the professionalism of the police force, because I represent the American Federation of Government Employees Workers at U.S. Department of Agriculture here in St. Louis. And we fought some years back, this was 1988, I believe. We had Congressman Clay Sr. speak on our behalf in the U.S. Congress in favor of creating an independent appeals division within the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where farmers and the rural people that my union members are supposed to serve, could be questioned by the public. We are there, in the case of the police are there to protect and serve. We're there to serve farmers and rural people, to make loans and provide grant programs in rural development and to keep farmers on the land. But our union, as professionals, felt it was very important if we want to maintain the support of the community that we are supposed to serve, that we should support there to be an independent community-type police accountability. In this case, you might call it, we called it an independent appeals division, because it's difficult. We have to sometimes represent one of our members who may have discriminated against a farmer, but we try to teach that member. We don't just go represent that member as always being right just because they're our member. We feel that as public servants, there is a higher responsibility that we have to the public that we are there to serve. And I have urged my brothers and sisters in the Police Officers Association, I don't know if any of you are associated with them, but at least you say you are police professionals. I think as police professionals, as police union members, we should want to be accountable to the community and to build a stronger, positive relationship with the community that we are there to serve. Otherwise, there won't be any support for our budget or for our jobs, or for our training or the other things that we need. And so I always try to bring that element to this discussion. I really appreciate what my brother, the teacher, said. Teachers are similar. Our state workers are similar. We need to be accountable to the community, and I urge that, in this process of local control, let's make it real local control, where there is this independent accountability to the community.
Christy Griffin?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to make comments. First, I would like to add, as far as the civilian review is concerned, that there is a very serious need to dispel a lot of the distrust that exists between many people in the community and the police department. And by having citizens involved in that process, it gives at least some degree of credibility to the process. So I think it's extremely important that that does exist, and that it reflects much more on the police department and gives it a more positive view when there is outside participation by the citizenry that is able to give their view of what has taken place. Also, has there been any consideration of checks and balances for the mayor as far as his decisions, such as appointments that might be voted on by the Board of Aldermen?
An example, what kind of example would you give? Checks and balances for what appointments?
Appointments of the chief, any of his decisions.
Well, and I think it kind of goes back to his question. What's the recommendation? Instead of asking us, what is your recommendation or what are your thoughts about that, what that should look like, so we can take it back. So we're not sitting here with all of the answers. We're asking you for your feedback and your input. So if that's a concern, kind of follow that through and tell me what you see as a system of checks and balances.
Well, that there should be some degree of checks and balances, that all of this power should not simply be held by the mayor, that the Board of Aldermen or some other body, and which logically would be the Board of Aldermen, would review some of the decisions that he's making.
Well, the Board of Aldermen has broad authority over the budget of all operating divisions and has broad oversight power as to, the chief says that, he's willing to appear anytime the committee wants to. That's because he has good relations with them and, a long history of good service. But it's also because that's the function of the Board of Aldermen. When they call up an operating division of the city and they say, we want to inquire into this, then we pull it all together and make our presentations and answer their questions. The mayor also is accountable because he stands, or she, and we haven't had a woman mayor yet, every 4 years for re-election. And whereas before a mayor could say, I'm just one of 5 votes on the Board of Police Commissioners, now that mayor has to say, that police department is part of my Department of Public Safety, and when the voters evaluate my performance, they're going to factor that in. And I think that the mayors are, in my time as an adult, are conscientious and have been interested in the police department, but they haven't always had a Board of Police Commissioners who have agreed with them on different things and have had very limited control. I think that the executive branch, that a mayor should have the people, that a mayor elected by the people of St. Louis should be able to make senior appointments. That's part of our system, and if they don't do a good job, it means that the mayor hasn't done a good job and shouldn't be returned to office, and that's always the prerogative of the voter.
Zaki Baruti.
Good evening. I don't have a question. I just had a couple of comments. First of all, the call for local control of the police, that has been a call that was put forth from the community for years now and been finally actualized, but not in the format that we want. I'm here to express a deep concern as it relates to Chief that you were mentioning about the need of service to the community. And I'm just putting it out there again, and I know you're not policy makers, but you influence policy that the community calls for in a clear, unequivocal voice for some form of police accountability board, because number one, many people have an aversion if they have complaints of going down to the police department, because they become afraid, more or less, in terms of filing complaints with the bureaucracy. And then with a police accountability board, it brings the police much more closer to the community in terms of accountability. So I'm just emphasizing the fact that in your discussions that there's a push as it relates to policy for the implementation of a police accountability board. And last but not least, of course, several years ago, there was a police board, civilian review board that was passed by a majority of the Board of Aldermen, which was reflective of the community call for review board. So again, that call has not diminished, and if anything, we'll be moving much further on calling for it. So I just want to encourage you on that. And last but not least, the gentleman, I just want to echo the gentleman about the drones. We don't need no drones.
Right.
John Martin? John Martin.
I think, in my opinion, that we do need this civilian review. And my question, Chief, is to you, the police officer, when you talk about the community as a whole, everybody in the city of St. Louis doesn't feel like part of the community. With our sons and daughters being shot 20, 25 times, no explanation, like it's just a piece of meat or something. It's like police officers making the difference between the people of who they are when it comes to investigating the murder or saying that this person had a gun or didn't have a gun. I would like to know, is this civilian board, is anything going to be done or recommended to the police so that when you say community, that everybody will feel like part of the community? Because everybody in St. Louis don't feel like part of the community.
And that's a challenge that we're working on, and I'm working on daily. I hear that comment, and I don't think we got here overnight. I don't know if there's an overnight fix. We've looked at things like redistricting to try and make sure that the resources are distributed fairly throughout the city. We talk about the way we investigate crimes. We are just slightly below the national average in solving aggravated assaults and homicides. I wish we were better. We need the cooperation of the community and the public to come forward. Law enforcement, I don't want to have I don't want to have to arrest anybody, because if I don't have to arrest them, that means we don't have a victim. We need to have a comprehensive strategy about the community to keep it safe. Law enforcement has the big role in it. I get that and I understand that, but we need to sit down and have conversations with people like you about how we can do our job better, what you can do to help us, and what the community can do to help itself. And Christy Griffin and her groups have had conversations like that. Better Family Life, Demetrius Johnson, Kabir Muhammad, everybody, Khatib Wahid, everybody has those conversations. We just need to come together as a community and find strategies that work. And I get it, we need to be better, absolutely, working on it every day.
What about retraining the police in their thinking that everybody is a citizen here, that you don't go by the color of my skin and way you treat me? That's what's going on, sir.
And I couldn't agree with you more.
That's definitely what's going on.
Thank you very much. Cedric A. Brown, did I get that right? Thank you.
She basically answered my question dealing with the savings.
Mm-hmm.
But the police accountability, it states you guys still will be using IAD in your decision making when it comes time to discipline an officer if someone make a complaint towards him. But it states that you, being the chief, the decision would be left up to you whether he's been disciplined correctly or not. Or am I correct with that?
Yeah, I'm one step in the process, and there's always an appeal process to the Civil Service Commission, which could overrule the chief of police. So yeah, I am a part of the process, but I'm just a piece of it.
Okay, one more question. As you guys go forward, is that city, you being local, you guys being local control now, that the process of the county police coming in with the city, does that play the part into you us saving or have any decision, or will that take in effect?
That is actually trying to make the city and the county safer and solve more crime. I see no financial savings in that at all when we talk about cross-deputization and riding Metrolink together, working on bomb and arson together, those types of things. So that's about safety and security and crime fighting. It's not necessarily about saving money. And to your first point, I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked at, on our website, we have our annual reports. And so it gives you a little bit of context around the internal affairs process. Not only, we talk about arrest, and we talk about the people that are arrested, the crimes, the good things that the department does. There's also a section in each annual report that talks about IAD investigations. And it shows the total number of complaints filed and the outcomes at a high level of those. It also shows how many officers were disciplined, how many officers are no longer employed by the Metropolitan Police Department. So I think if we're going to have this conversation, I would like to see a show of hands of people that have looked at that in our annual report. A couple. So if we want to have a conversation about local control and about civilian review, you probably need to understand what the police department does first about disciplining our officers. Always room for improvement, always processes that we can talk about, but we do have a baseline that we're starting from that at least you're not aware of that I would encourage you to look at. Help me, Simmons? Simmons?
Yep.
What's your first name? I'm sorry, I can't read.
Montega.
Montega Simmons, thank you.
Yes. I guess first, just following the trend of the evening, just a small comment. You're asking in this case for feedback from this group, and I think you're getting it. You're seeing it at every single meeting. This is actually the first time that the public has had an opportunity to have any input into
Actually,
this process.
it's the third meeting, but that's
I know.
okay.
I mean, this is the third meeting, but I'm saying these meetings are the first time that the public has had an opportunity to have any voice in this project. That was by design, not by you, but by the very committee that actually wrote the language for the initiative that, in this case, brought us local control. So what you're hearing is public concern. And in your report back, I just hope this is not underestimated, meaning the public has a demand for both accountability, transparency, and participation. And the fact that no member of the public, no actual organization who's worked on these issues, no citizen concern is represented on this body is of concern, because it's a historic opportunity. And that really seems to be both minimalized, and it's an opportunity that could be wasted if we don't take a moment to look at it. The other thing that I wanted to kind of lift up, you mentioned before that the estimates for the savings were actually included in the budget that was submitted. During the hearing before Ways and Means, the budget director said exactly the opposite, that this couldn't be estimated at the time. So I'm curious as to whether you may have factored it into your numbers, because at the time, the budget director wasn't willing to actually extend and say what kind of savings were actually reflected in the budget or where these savings would come from. He said none of that could actually be estimated for this year. We'd actually have to do that going forward.
And all I can speak to, that last point, is I testified in the Board of Aldermen on the Ways and Means Committee, and during my testimony, I said this budget reflected anticipated savings from local control. So what the budget director said is a separate conversation that you'll have to have with him, but what I said to the Ways and Means Committee was this budget anticipated savings from local control.
I'd like to address your first point, and I don't want to repeat myself too much about this idea of what you characterize as this is the first opportunity for the public to have input in this transition. I would say to you that, you certainly, and I don't need to, you know this, that you don't need our permission to have conversations about the future of your police department. I would say the exact opposite, that with local control, it presents the opportunity for you to begin the conversation with your elected officials and to make your point of view known to the new governance of this police department, which is the city of St. Louis, not the state of Missouri. And, those conversations with your representative on the Board of Aldermen, and the mayor appears all around the city at different places, and many of you have spoken to him and asked questions and made your point of view known. And so there's almost unlimited opportunity to have a conversation. And the best part, the most effective course of change is that which is initiated by the public itself. You are correct when you say that the movement to local control began with the public itself, and a broad segment of the public, not just those who wanted the kind of accountability measures that have been a big part of this evening, but people who generally don't like the idea of the biggest element cost-wise and arguably the most important element relating to the safety of our neighborhoods and our children and our schools being in the hands of four guys that they never heard of before, that the governor knows in some fashion, but rather it should be up to the citizens. So, the opportunities are there to be involved as never before. And it doesn't depend on us posting a notice at the Julia Davis Library at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening in December.
Jeff Kroll.
I wanted to talk about civilian review board, but to Montega's point, I also want to talk about trust, which I didn't catch your name, but she mentioned the issue, and so did he. To the question of trust, I think Montega is expressing a concern, and I know you guys aren't legislators, but the concern that the city of St. Louis expressed our feeling about local control, and exactly that it should include an independent civilian review board. And there was legislation that was approved and that included that, and that reflected the citizens' concern. And our mayor was participated in quiet backroom negotiations to get rid of that. And what got voted on isn't what the people of St. Louis said we wanted, and I think perhaps that's what Montague is addressing. So it's that kind of input that got curtailed, and now perhaps you're inviting it again, which is a healthy thing, and I appreciate that. On the issue of trust, I hope, I didn't catch this woman's name, but I hope when you relay these concerns, you won't gloss over, you know, that she couldn't put her finger on what kind of checks and balances she wanted to see and ignore her bigger question about trust. And I believe you. I've heard you interviewed several times on the radio, and each time I get more encouraged. So I just want you to know that. I get the sense that you believe in community policing. And I also believe you when you say that you're addressing the concern of trust in terms of internal training and discipline. But there's still, I think, overwhelmingly, the community feels that that also needs to be expressed in the way of an independent civilian review board. And when the teacher over here expressed he wanted to hear your all opinion about that, you said, well, you're here to hear our opinion about why. Well, this is my opinion about why. We hear from people at your level and in the upper levels of leadership frequently that you want professionalism in the police force and you want your police officers to be accountable, and I believe that. But there is a culture of brotherhood among the police which I don't begrudge. I think it's appropriate that that culture be there, but it has problematic aspects. And problematic in that culture of brotherhood is the sense that we're the only ones that know what we have to deal with, and nobody else can judge us because they're not us. And only we can judge each other, and they are loath to have anybody that's not them being a part of that. It's a culture that is quick to circle the wagons and come to the defense of anybody who's being accused of abuse, and so consequently abuses don't get addressed. I hope you're going to relay that this feeling and concern has been expressed by many people in this room, and I'm just one more adding to that concern.
Thank you. Charles Quincy Troop.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody before me said everything that I was going to say. About that. But there are some concerns about the police department. And I think the basic question, I guess I'll have to pose to you, how and what steps are you going to take to make the police department representative of the community that it's supposed to be serving? And I say supposed to be serving very seriously.
So your question is about the hiring practices of the Metropolitan Police Department. Is that what I'm asking? Just so I'm clear.
What percent of the police department is black?
About 36% of the police department is African American.
What percent of the city department?
51, 52.
The thought is, in my mind, that if the police department is not representative of the people that it serves, that it can't serve that population. So what plans do you all have of increasing the number of black and female police officers?
Well, I think, and females are actually more grossly underrepresented than African Americans, just to your point. I think we take your feedback and I hear the question. I'll answer it as the chief, everything I can. We're looking at an academy class sometime in January, and I want it to be balanced. I want it to be African American, I want it to represent females, I want it to represent the community that we work on. I'm working very hard. One class isn't going to change the entire makeup of the police department, but if we do that consistently going forward. So anything that the community can do to help bring qualified applicants, regardless of race, gender, just qualified people that we want professional representing our department, representing our city, I'll do everything I can to hire them. I value education, I value military experience, I value a lot of things, but I also value having a diverse department that represents the community that it serves.
Of all of the killings that have taken place in the city of St. Louis this year, how many were under the age of 18?
Alderman, I just don't have that, I just don't have that information at my fingertips. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Well, I'm saying that because I hope the seed has been planted. I've heard a lot of people say the same thing, but they were saying it in a different way. And that is, you need to develop a program for growing your own. So these programs, mentoring programs, you need outreach programs for young black males in this city to start having a lateral relationship with them. Right now, as I see the police officers and their relationship with the young black male, they are afraid of them. And that's why they're shooting them the way they're shooting them. And that's a major problem for me. And you only, especially when they're not armed. So there's no way that the police department is ever going to reflect the community unless it gets out into the community and start recruiting and getting programs in the community to start growing your own. So you can't come up and say, well, we was lip some or we couldn't find them. And you know, they've been saying that for years, just like local control. The police department and everybody else was diametrically opposed to local control. They didn't want no parts of local control because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And they did it. And Shamel was the only one that brought any kind of fiscal sanity to it, but that didn't work. So what do you think about developing some kind of recruitment program, young black men, bringing them into the police department and increasing those numbers to whereby the police department can function? I'm a senior citizen, and I don't trust the police department. And I don't feel that they're responsible to, wait, no, let me finish. And I don't feel that they're responsible to me. And I'm 30 years as a Democrat, 33 years Democratic committee, 24 years as a legislator, and 8 years as an alderman, and I still can't get a damn thing done. So I can imagine what the regular citizen challenge are. So I think that's critical, and I think that the main thing that you need to do is to try and develop a lateral relationship with these young black males, because they're not afraid of you either. Because you created the kind of environment in the black community whereby the young kids, they don't have no fear of dying. They have no fear of dying. And when you deal with a population that's not afraid of you and don't mind dying, you have a problem. Not only do you have that problem, we in the community have the problem. So this is something I think you all need to look at very, very seriously.
And I appreciate it, and I agree with you. We need everybody's help. The only thing that I take exception with is that we created this environment. I think society has gotten to a point where young black men kill each other. I think we have to have a real conversation about some of the root causes of that and address it. But I don't blame that on the police department.
Well, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, which I think you all kind of screwed it up a little bit earlier. I thought it said food, shelter, water, and then safety. So if these kids are living in abject poverty, with the lack of food, shelter, water, homeless, a lot of them, and they're out on the street, and there's no program to touch them, then the games are going to always prevail.
And I don't disagree with you. But again, law enforcement has a narrower scope. And you as a legislator and an alderman for those years know the complexity of the problems.
No, but I knew what law enforcement did when I was a kid. I knew what the fire department did when I was a kid. They had baseball games in every firehouse. They had baseball teams in the police district and everywhere else. So,
and we still do that. We have the Police Athletic League, which serves thousands of kids We have the Explorer program. We have a variety of programs.
Programs, but I'm talking about in every in the districts competing against each other. I don't see that now. Where, I mean, which you don't want to see, because at that time the community was not 60 or 55, well, if you say 55, it's about 60% black. But now that it's black, and you have that, it's that fear, and you don't want to touch them, you don't want to get involved, and that's the issue. But you've got to let them know that you give a damn. And if you don't give a damn, then you're going to continue to get the same thing that you're getting, which we pay the price for. You know, so they're in our houses, they're in our cars, they're in our garages, they're all over.
Thank you.
I can sit down.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Jonathan Smith.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Chief, esteemed board. I want to serve warning, I am not an eloquent speaker. Comments that have been expressed, I think, pretty much on target. I made up my mind that I wanted to come and add my voice because it has really been stressful. Last few years here in St. Louis, I've seen some things that I would not expect to happen in a major metropolis in America. We have the World Series come here, man, you know. The suggestions that have came forth tonight, I really hope y'all take these serious, because you made the statement, we need community involvement. The community needs to know they can trust the police. When a young man is shot 25 times with his hands in the air, but a hospital and autopsy confirmed the man had his hands in the air, witnessing the children, the people in the community. And when the police don't, and the man, the circuit attorney, don't address this, the reason why you might see so many black men kill black men is because there has been a subliminal message that has been handed down through the decades. A Negro's life ain't worth a dime. If you kill a white person, you will be executed.
Yes, sir.
You kill a Negro. Come on, man. We have to understand that this is not 30 years ago. The days when those men were marching and asking and pleading, this is a new generation. If somebody doesn't make sincere effort to bridge this gap, I'm very concerned that one of these days the whole world gonna be looking at St. Louis at a World Series and something very drastic happens. Because, you know, anytime something can happen and it's not put out in the certain newspapers, the media, you know, decides what, but certain newspapers will expose it. Then people are getting mixed messages. There's two St. Louis, and that we can't survive like that. We have to come together. Now you say you need more community involvement, and I agree. The job of police officers solving these crimes in the streets, you know, the murders and the don't tell, don't snitch, that's the code that, no. We want to be safe. You know what I'm saying? Don't just take for granted that because, you know, the murderer might have the same complexion as me, that's my buddy. No, we want to feel safe, just as the people in Ladue want to feel safe. But I tell you this, and I'm gonna sit down. Chief, I have experienced personally levels of corruption. And man, look, I believe you are a good guy. And I tell you, too many people fool me, unless you're a real sharp con man. I believe you're a real good guy. Because your name and Mr. Ross' name was involved in a case involving me. Okay, and I watched how you handled it. You stepped in when The Justice Department was going crazy. I mean, it was like a revolving door at the Justice Center in the workhouse. Prisoners just walk out when they want to. But I need you to understand, this is all a reflection of the administration. Now, if you don't correct something, if you don't address something when there's a problem, that's not good leadership. There's a problem. And the people need to see aggressive, dealing with these issues aggressively. Now the Post-Dispatch has put in, they did a story about Kerry Ball Jr. Certain medias have talked about the Gladiator case. I really wish that the administration would deal with these issues and accept responsibility, address it, and not just, drag it out and say, oh no, because that's what the criminals do. I'm not guilty. Blood all on the hand, but they hollering I'm not guilty. If you want the citizen to have that type of relationship, then we have to, that word somebody use it, accountability. Thank y'all.
Hannah Bolzer?
Yeah. So I appreciate your hearing people's different or similar opinions, as the case may be, and I hope that you are really able to hear them. And I think we've heard over and over and over again the same message, the demand for a civilian review board, police accountability in our city. This isn't the first time you've heard it. So this is also a moment for you to be accountable to us. There's 50 people here today. People are concerned. The system is broken. People are scared of the police. I'm scared of the police. I'm scared to call the police. Something is very wrong here. And so just as you're hearing from us, I think this can be a moment for us to hear from you about what we can expect moving forward. How many people here support Civilian Review Board, police accountability? Woo! All right, how many people here do not support? Okay, so you have unanimous voice from the community here as you open it up for public input. In 2007, the Civilian Review Board was proposed and was passed by the majority of the Board of Aldermen and then was vetoed by the mayor. And so I would like to know from all 5 committee members that are here today, will you, knowing what you know now, seeing the unanimous support from here, from the public community, the impassioned voices that you've heard tonight, the knowledge, the clarity that the system is broken and that there is this need for police accountability. You say you can only advise. I want to know if we can count on each of your support for a police accountability board in St. Louis.
Thank you for your comment, and I think the board has a lot of work to do and a lot of things to consider, so thank you.
Are you going to answer my question?
I said thank you for your comment. We were taking comments this evening. It's public comment, and all the comments are being registered. So I think it would be inappropriate to ask the individual members their position on the issue right now. Perhaps privately you could have a conversation with them, but that's not the intent today.
So the board has... So there's no response in terms of your of anyone's position on this.
Unless the individual member would like to make a comment right now.
There's no support. There's no open support. Let's be clear. There's no open support for police accountability.
No, I said that we're taking public comment this evening, and we'll be happy once we've formulated our report to share it publicly so everyone can see it. So thank you.
That will be answered in the report?
Yeah, well, it certainly, I don't know, and I will speak to this. I don't know how we can have a conversation in public comment and not address the issue because it's been so prevalent in the conversation this evening. So I won't say a position on it, but I would think that we would do a disservice if we didn't address it in our comment. Holly Rowe.
Good evening. I am a state worker. I determine eligibility for many citizens. And we attend meetings in Jefferson City trying to get our directors and who have you who are in positions of supposed power to pay attention, observe what is happening, and then act. And as I've listened this evening, what I'm hearing is incredible bureaucracy. And as a citizen, I'm not finding it as I'm listening, I'm not feeling any confidence that things will be heard and things will be met and efficiently dealt with, and that the comments coming from people are taken seriously. And that bothers me as I listen to it. And I guess I've been in these meetings fighting with just our directors to not continue a reorganization project that is going to put St. Louis City and County in harm's way. And they're watching it down there at my office at Shoto, where we have very few people to service the community, and yet we say we're concerned and we hear you. But I want you to know that it's difficult for me because I'm observing bureaucracy at its absolute worst. And it's like we have people that get in positions of power, and we're here, and people are being told, they're asking questions, well, talk to your alderman. Yeah, well, we're an advisory board. Well, we can't this and we can't that. Well, what we're looking for is somebody that can and that we know will do. Thank you.
Damian Johnson?
Is this working?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I would like a police civilian review board. However, I have done research. I saw some issues with some past civilian review boards. I've seen police officers tell, let's say, an independent review board, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and that essentially made a civilian review board ineffective. And I don't know if you do it. I don't know if in future chief will do it. I hope the civilian review board can be cooperative with the police department. I also seen sometimes police departments will get what do they call it, a inspector general, and hire a single professional outside of the police department if they will want professionalism as well as independence as well. Maybe you might want to talk to surrounding Midwestern police chiefs, how they discipline the police officers, or and I just want to say there's multiple ways of having independent civilian review boards as well as professionals at the same time. I also want to know if you can consider changing the lighter, the outer clothing, because I know if police officers wear light blue and light white, they can be seen at nighttime. If they wear dark black, dark blue, it's harder for them to see. So that's what I want to address.
Thank you. Eddie Simmons.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the time. As a retired police officer, the past president of the Ethical Society of Police for 13 years, I've always pushed for fairness. Now we have local control. This is a clean slate. And I tell everybody that let's give this a chance. It's a new chief, new direction, and different people that are in charge now. I have concern with internal affairs. And what I would like to see to address, and that you would take a look at, the punishment. I feel that the punishment, internal affairs, is just all over the place. You have, I'm not gonna sit here and name this happened to him or whatever like that, but what I'm saying is, if there is a problem with an officer, and this officer gets this punishment, and another officer does the exact same thing, and the punishment is different from him, whether it be color, female, male, it should all be the same. And when the punishment is over, once the officer has the punishment, that it cannot carry on into the district, then the lieutenant hops on, because you did this, now I'm gonna do this and this and this. This brings morale down with the African-American officers, it does. And I would like to see that. And also too, I think within the police, now that we don't have the Board of Police Commissioners, I feel a disconnect that, I know you say that you can go on the website and you can read, and there will be a meeting every other month. at this meeting that we have every other month, will the public be able to speak?
To answer your question, I've pledged to attend the public safety meetings in the Board of Aldermen, and so that would be a question for the Board of Aldermen that I can't answer. But I pledge to attend at least every other month's meeting, or if they have an issue, attend whenever they ask.
So they won't be able to speak?
I don't know.
Okay, just, that's all I can say. Thank you.
I have Jeff Krull again.
Thank you again. I want to talk about cost, and I'm going to say something that might get me booed or worse. But I don't agree with probably most people here about the drones, about, I mean, it's a horrible name, it's a euphemism now, but as much as I want police accountability, I'd like to see accountability for criminals as well. And I'm for anything that's going to help catch people. And the so-called drones are a lot cheaper to operate than helicopters. But also in the way of, and I would also say I would want to see the use of those under, subject to the same accountability as what we're calling for in general. And responding to Quincy Troop's concern about recruiting, I have a suggestion, and I think it's been done before, but provide housing in the most impacted communities. I mean, flat out give a house or provide 5 years rental or whatever to young police officers that would like to serve in those communities. And for any other aspect concerning cost, I'm for more spending. I'm for raising taxes and paying those taxes if it means you guys getting what you need to do what we're paying you to do.
Thank you. And again, if anybody would like to speak, we have an opportunity. The last name that I have on the list is Carl Smith.
Good evening, Chief. After Eddie got up and spoke, I thought it would be remiss of me if I didn't get up and say anything, because I did do 22 years with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, so I've lived on both sides of it. I happen to be the president of the St. Louis Association of Retired Police Officers, and one thing I would like to do is to mentor young African-American officers, and we're even open to our other officers. One thing that I know is important, and that is communication, also transparency, and trust. I'm not going to go into a whole lot this evening, and that's, I was going to really just be here and not say anything. But I think that as a community and as a veteran of the department, now retired, myself and other officers that have retired, because I know the community, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to be through. I grew up in the city of St. Louis, stayed in the city of St. Louis up until I retired. I've been retired now since 2001. And that's when I moved in unincorporated St. Louis County. I grew up in the ghetto, I grew up in the project, so I know the mindset of African-American males. Most of you know that I was assigned to juvenile, and it wasn't like I was trying to go out and just arrest folk and do them, because if anybody would give me ear, it would be somebody that knew where I come from. And so I did try and help rather than just enforce. And so maybe we'll just come to the table. I'll have that conversation with you in private. I don't believe in all of that. I don't need no, and that's it. And so all I'm gonna say is that we just need to communicate one with the other in the community, and there needs to be a trust. And that's all I have to say.
David Jackson.
Good evening, thank you. My name is David Jackson, and I'm president of the St. Louis Board of Education. And I also live here in the neighborhood just 2 blocks over. I guess I just want to echo what folks were saying in the room about accountability and trust with the police department. When I was a youngster, about 21, I interviewed with Chief Camp. And during that interview process, all my life I wanted to be a police officer because we had police officers in our school that were friendly, that acted like our dads. And I wanted to be a police officer. And I made it all the way up to the interview with the chief and decided at the last minute that I'd rather join the military. The one thing that I know is, like a gentleman said here earlier, these young black males have been through so much, not only at home, but in the streets, that they care less about anybody, including themselves. And that's why they will shoot back with no questions or no doubts. One of the worst things I ever saw was the morning I went to get my coffee at Natural Bridge and Grand and saw the police officer shot by a young black male. That was devastating to me because, one, I actually seen it. Two, no one that was standing out there came to the assistance of that officer. And to me, seeing that he was just getting out of his car to do his job and was shot, and I actually thought he was dead because of the amount of shots, that it just traumatized me. And so I also looked at when the young man, not only here but in other cities, was shot numerous times unarmed by police officers, that is a traumatic experience. And so one of the things I thought about is, when you see a police officer get up and says, I've been on the force for 15 years, I've been on the force for 20 years, I've been on the force for 30 years. Can you imagine what that police officer has been through, what he has seen, what he has experienced? Is he on the force too long? There's some folks are looking that maybe we need to have some type of program to bring that officer off the street, sit him down, and see where his head is. Should he still be on the street after 15 years of going through what he's been going through? The other issue is we need to re-educate our community on trusting police officers. I would like to suggest to this group that you institute some type of program within the department to come back into the community, educate the community on how to recognize police misconduct, police abuse, and the aggressiveness of bad police officers. There's bad professions all over the city, in the Board of Education, in the hospitals. But I think if you could educate the community on what to look for, and then after they've seen or experienced that, what do you do to follow up? Such as it's amazing that, Mr. Roth, I was really excited that you were part of looking at the city penal institutions, because those are some of the worst institutions in the country, in my opinion. When you have a person who's getting locked up at the Justice Center, and if you call down there to find him, they don't even know if he's in there or not, because there's 3 or 4 different departments within that system that don't talk to each other. So your relative calls you on the phone and says, I'm in the Justice Center, and I need to get out. You go down there to bond him out. They say he's not here. I was hoping that was going to be contracted out, and I actually thought you were really considering trying to get the city to contract those services out, because the city was not doing a good job on doing those services. And when you had the story that just came out about false arrest, I was one of those false arrests, and I have something in my police record that I'm trying to get what they call expunged, and did not know it was on there, and stopped me from getting very good jobs because I was misidentified, and it just sat there. So if there's a program in the police department that can come back into the community to re-educate them on how to trust the police department, I think that would go over extremely well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next name is Michelle Woodhouse. Thank you.
I have have notes on my phone, so I'm not really talking on my phone. But this is kind of an emotional issue for me because it's really hard to sit here as a citizen and hear the defensiveness up there and the reluctance from our city officials to implement some type of civilian review board. Because I think of your job in terms of like any company, right? You're a manager, right? And you have employees. And so your job is to make sure that your employees are working effectively. And in my company, if I had employees that were doing something wrong, they would be fired, right? And so there seems to be this disconnect in police that there's not the same policy. But I just want you to know that we're not here attacking all police, right? We're just wanting to hold the police accountable for weeding out the bad seeds so that the rest of the community doesn't have to deal with it. So that's your job, And then the difference is, in my line of work, if I have a bad employee who's not working properly and maybe they're giving bad customer service, it hurts the company, but it's not really doing anything major. When we're talking about the police, the wrongdoings could be something as severe as murder or extortion or things that are severe infractions of the law. And so that's why this really needs to be taken seriously. We need that check, and we need someone to be accountable for that. And so I just want to really emphasize that we're not attacking you, and we're not saying you're evil, and we don't believe in, that all police are bad. We're just saying that you need to get those people out, right? Get the bad apples out. And, your job is to clean up the streets, and so there should be citizens who help you clean up the police force.
John Martin?
Yeah, I just want to say a few more things and then I'm sit down. As far as like the community, what the lady was saying, the community needs to feel involved. The apple don't fall too far from the tree. Just like you say, the community, the crooked people out there, and they need to be checked. You also have crooked people on your police force. And the things that are done that you don't know, like they kill people, put guns in their hand, put dope on them, whatever. It happens in our community. I don't know if you're aware of it, I'm quite sure you are aware of it. But the bottom line is, as far as disrespect, as far as you're saying that we have to respect the police department. Respect is earned. You don't automatically get respect because you're a policeman. So if you don't earn it, that don't mean nothing to nobody, especially to the black community. And as the gentleman there said, even I'm an old man myself, and I have no respect for the police department because, like I said, my youth, my females, and my young sons are getting killed in my community. Being shot 25 to 30 times, and we're just sweeping that under the rug. So why is this happening? So that makes people like me think, well, the police is making a difference in the community. The community are all supposed to be one. That's the way you all talk it, but it's not panning out like that. And all your police officers don't feel like you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make comments tonight? What's your name?
My name is Charles Smith.
Charles Smith.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not the good apple or the bad apple, but I can see something like in the solution for y'all and us in the community, in the community. The best thing I can understand is like me, I get harassed because I be on the wrong set, and I get harassed and I tell the officer, I went to jail, but right now I'm on a clean slate. I'm just going to come from my care house. But I believe it's the best thing about it that we all come together. And I was about to ask you about the Squalor Act. You can fix up an apartment, a vacant building, fix it up, and I would like to know how do you go back doing it? But I believe if you have some people that trying to help each other in the community about building them, vacant houses, because homeless people might be needing some sleep. A little something can come out to make a big thing better. I don't know, I'm just,
Okay, you want to answer that kind of offline?
Without getting locked up.
All right, I think Mr. Roth will talk to you kind of offline, so we can get to, I think Christy had another comment, and he can answer your question perhaps about that.
Okay, thank you.
I do, and it's a very quick comment because they do have to respond to you. Whether it's drones or anything else, we don't need to spend any more money catching criminals. We need to start spending money preventing criminals and start investing in human beings.
And I will echo that. I would much, if I had my way, we would arrest no one, because I would want to prevent crime. If we prevent crime, we don't have victims, and the police department has done their job well. Arresting is a last resort when we are forced into a situation. So I support that. And if we can invest into the kids 15 and 20 years down the pipeline, let's do that and interrupt this cycle of violence that's happening. You and I agree 100% on that comment. Anybody else that has a comment that would like to mention to the committee? And anybody that has something can. I would like to thank you, everybody, for participating, and thank you for being here. We listen, we hear. This was about hearing what the community's input was. And it's very clear that this group resonates very well, that civilian review is an issue that you're very concerned about. I would also encourage you to look at some of the things that the police department has in place already, like our annual report, so you can see what we do and how we do discipline our people. I think there's I think more information makes us all better, and so that's out there. So thank you very much, and if we do and when we do have follow-up meetings to this, we'll make sure that they're posted well in advance so everyone can have an opportunity to attend. So thank you very much for being here.
So you'll issue a report?
The Transition Committee will put together something formally. So I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. To adjourn. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.